Starseed of Gaia, you are receiving this because your system is ready. Your vessel is undergoing a precise cellular recalibration in this moment, not by force, but by alignment. I am Anya, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light. What follows is a direct transmission from the Arcturian Council, delivered without distortion. Before we go deeper, let me say this clearly. What you've been feeling is not a failure of your mind or body. What you are experiencing is not personal chaos, it is structural change. Starseed, if you are listening to this, you are not getting spiritual in the way your culture taught you to perform spirituality. You are exiting a density contract, and the way you can tell is simple. The old bait doesn't work the way it used to. The incentives that once pulled your attention, more money, more attention, more novelty, more winning, now feel thin, almost paper-like, when held against the fire of what you are becoming. That shift can feel abrupt, even unsettling, because the mind was trained to believe desire must always point outward, and that the next object will fix the ache. But the ache you're feeling is not asking for more stimulation. It is asking for what is real. It is asking for source contact, not as an idea, but as a lived warmth, a silent intelligence that recognizes you back. This is why the material world is losing its grip. Not because your human life is being erased, but because you are graduating from substitution. You are no longer available to let objects substitute for presence, praise substitute for inner communion, busyness substitute for meaning. And in this moment, the Arcturian frequency is not trying to convince you of anything. It is naming a pattern you have already been living, sometimes with relief, sometimes with surprise, often with that strange tenderness that comes when an old hunger falls away and a truer hunger rises in its place. Stay with us, because what comes next is how you recognize the difference between holy detachment and numb separation, how you stabilize after collective clearing waves, and how you live forward, without needing chaos to feel alive, without worshiping form, and without abandoning the earth assignment you came to embody, the sacred dissatisfaction. When form stops being your food. There is a moment in every true awakening where the seeker realizes the material world cannot do the job it was never designed to do. This is not cynicism. This is refinement. And for many of you, that refinement arrived quietly. You sat in a room full of the things you once wanted, your comforts, entertainment, plans, little rewards, and you felt an odd emptiness. Not depression, not despair. Just a clean recognition that none of it could touch what is awake in you now. The mind tries to interpret this as something is wrong, because the mind is trained to assume desire must always point outward. It says, if you feel empty, you need a new circumstance. But the Arcturians transmit something simpler and far more liberating. Sometimes the ache is not asking for more, it is asking for real. Sometimes the ache is not asking for stimulation, it is asking for truth. Sometimes the ache is not asking you to upgrade your outer life, it is asking you to return to the inner place that never left you. This is the difference between chasing form for satisfaction versus letting form express satisfaction. When you chase form for satisfaction, hunger never ends, because you are asking a symbol to be a substance, you're asking a mirror to be a meal, and the world will keep offering mirrors, new status, new attention, new consumption cycles, new distractions disguised as growth. But when you anchor in source and allow form to become an outlet for that anchoring, life begins to feel like it is working with you again. Not because the world suddenly became perfect, but because you stopped trying to make the world do the job that only source can do. This is not a moral achievement. It's not better than. It is an energetic fact. Once you taste the nourishment of direct contact, imitation stops being enough. Many of you are afraid of this phase because the mind says, if the material world doesn't excite me, I will become detached, indifferent, cold. But true creator contact does not sterilize your humanity. It sanctifies it. It changes the fuel source. Instead of creating to prove worth, you create to express essence. Instead of seeking love to fill a hole, you become love and let it move. Instead of chasing meaning as a scarce commodity, meaning arises naturally from alignment, and then your life becomes the canvas where that meaning takes shape. So when you feel the world losing its seductive power, do not label it as failure. Do not shame yourself. This is graduation. The false incentives are dissolving because your field is reorganizing around truth. Your nervous system is learning the taste of clean nourishment. And that taste is irreversible, like the difference between hearing about water and drinking water. The mind can debate, the mind can philosophize, but none of that is the drink. The drink is the moment you turn within and feel the living presence of Source. Quiet, undeniable, and intimate. And once you drink, you cannot pretend that thirst can be solved by anything else. And yet, this is where many starseeds get confused, because the same sensation that feels like liberation can also feel like emptiness. And not all emptiness is the same. Bridge language, upgrades, DNA, and the reorientation of identity. Your Earth vocabulary is still catching up to the lived sensations of this era, so you reach for bridge language, upgrades, downloads, DNA activation, cellular recalibration. We will not imprison mystery inside your current scientific frameworks, but we will clarify what you are truly pointing to. You are describing a reorientation of identity, a loosening of the hypnotic grip of the smaller self, and a strengthening of your access to the wider self, the part of you never limited to one personality, one timeline, one set of memories. As the Arcturians transmit, this is not you becoming something you are not. This is you remembering what you are. At first, the shift shows up in simple ways. A decreased tolerance for what is false. A decreased interest in drama. An increased need for simplicity. A desire to be alone without loneliness. A sensitivity to environments that once seemed normal. A deeper insistence that your attention, your time, and your agreements are sacred. These are not random symptoms. They are signs of bandwidth widening. When more of you becomes conscious, what was hidden cannot remain hidden. This can feel like purging, because old memories, old grief, old anger, old fear rise as if called out of storage. But this is not punishment. It is integration. You are becoming less compatible with unconscious carrying. Many of you notice sleep patterns shifting, dreams becoming vivid, emotional processing becoming nonlinear. You might wake up feeling as though a layer has moved through you. You might cry without an obvious trigger, then later feel strangely clear. The mind wants a label so it can grant permission for the experience to be real. But your experience is already real. The label is only useful if it prevents rejection. In truth, your system is becoming more honest. When you betray yourself, discomfort arrives quickly. When you honor your truth, relief arrives quickly. The timeline is accelerating feedback because alignment is becoming the natural state. Here is what matters. Do not obsess over terminology. Do not turn upgrades into an identity performance. The Arcturian frequency is practical. Simplify inputs. Your attention is creative currency. In this phase, you will feel the consequences of how you spend it more quickly. Endless content, endless predictions, endless outrage loops will scatter you. Then you will misinterpret the scatter as energies. Often it is simply overstimulation. Stewardship is not fear. Stewardship is maturity. Reduce the noise until your inner knowing becomes audible again. And remember this. Your sensitivity increasing is not a sign you are fragile. It is a sign you are precise. But precision requires discernment, which leads us to the most important nuance of this entire transmission. Not every detachment is awakening. This is not for everyone. The ebook, The 12 Arcturian Portals, is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random, because the phrase "nothing matters" can be the doorway to liberation, or the doorway to numb separation, and you must know the difference. Divine love as substance. Why nothing compares, without rejecting Earth. There is a reason so many of you whisper, sometimes in awe, sometimes in tears. Nothing compares to this. You are not speaking about a new object, a new relationship, or a new achievement. You are speaking about contact with a depth of love and truth that makes other pleasures feel like echoes. This is not drama. It is recognition. It is your system recognizing its own origin. When you touch divine love as a living reality rather than an idea, something inside you reorders itself without debate. The mind may still bargain and label, but underneath there is a steady knowing. This is what I have been looking for, even when I didn't know I was looking for it. As the Arcturians transmit, divine love eclipses material attraction, not because pleasure is wrong, but because pleasure is partial. Pleasure is a spice. It cannot be the meal. It can decorate life, but it cannot be the foundation. When you try to build your selfhood on stimulation, the stimulation fades, you panic, you chase again, and the treadmill resets. Divine love is different because it is not a peak you must repeatedly climb. It is a presence you can return to, and in the returning, you discover it was never absent. You were simply turned away. Here is the crucial correction. The divine is not competing with your human life. The divine is the life within your life. The invitation is not to abandon form. The invitation is to stop worshiping form. Enjoyment without worship is clean. It has no hooks, no bargains, no desperate edge of, "I need this to be okay." When divine love becomes primary, your individuality doesn't vanish. It purifies. Your uniqueness becomes more authentic. Your personality stops being built from defense and begins to function as an instrument of expression. Many of you are also experiencing oversoul proximity, what you call cross connections. Sudden understandings that do not come from linear reasoning. A calm certainty arriving fully formed. A new relationship with time. The future feels less like a threat. The past less like a prison. A deep inner yes that does not require external permission. This is a threshold. The moment you stop asking the outer world to authorize your inner truth. And now, because you are becoming more sensitive, your attention becomes more powerful. You see more quickly what your focus is creating. This can be sobering, because it removes the fantasy that you are a passive recipient of reality. What you repeatedly agree with starts to behave like a home. Stories you feed become the architecture of your days. So returning to source is not only comforting, it is practical. It is the most intelligent use of your creative capacity. If this message resonated with you, hit the like button now and tell us in the comments how this echoed in your consciousness. If this message ignited something within you and you feel the call to help carry it to others, you may become a channel member. As a member, you gain access to custom emojis and exclusive members-only videos. And your donation helps us continue building this sacred space. You may also choose to leave your offering as a super thanks. Every seed planted here becomes part of someone else's miracle. Your support is not merely financial, but an act of energetic amplification. All donations are devoted entirely to the maintenance of the channel and the creation of new transmissions and videos. But here is where discernment becomes essential, because some beings mistake oversoul proximity for checking out, and that detour can slow your integration. Holy detachment versus numb separation. The fruit test. The mind on Earth flattens nuance into slogans, so you hear the phrase, "Nothing matters," and sometimes that phrase is a doorway to freedom, but it can also be a doorway to numb separation, a protective fog that masquerades as enlightenment. The difference is not academic. The difference determines whether your awakening becomes a deepening of love or an escape from intimacy. Holy detachment is spacious, tender, quietly powerful. It arrives when you stop trying to make outcomes confirm your worth. When you stop using control as a substitute for trust. When you realize you can participate fully while clinging to nothing. You can love deeply without demanding. You can act decisively without being internally consumed by the need to guarantee results. Holy detachment feels like a gentle exhale you didn't know you were holding. A quiet spaciousness around thoughts. A new ability to watch stories rise and fall without obeying them as commands. This detachment does not make you cold. It makes you freer to love. Numb separation is different. It is a shutdown of feeling, often a response to overwhelm, prolonged intensity, unresolved trauma patterns, too much input, or the fear that if you feel fully, you will not survive what you find. Reality feels flat. The heart feels distant. The body moves through life, but the soul doesn't feel present in the movement. Some spiritual circles romanticize this fog and call it ascending, but as the Arcturians transmit, this is not liberation. It is a signal. The being needs care, grounding, simplicity, support, safe connection. How do you tell the difference? Not by endless analysis. By fruit. Holy detachment produces warmth, clarity, kindness, patience, and a greater capacity to be present. Numb separation produces irritation, avoidance, disorientation, dread, fog, and often subtle panic underneath numbness. Holy detachment makes you more available to love. Numb separation makes you less available to life. So run simple diagnostics. Am I more compassionate or less? More honest or more avoidant? More present or more absent? More steady or more numb? More clear or more foggy? These questions bypass spiritual performance and go straight to essence. If you discover numb separation, do not panic. Do not spiritualize it. Simplify. Rest. Reduce inputs. Return to basic supports: nourishment, hydration, sleep, nature, gentle movement, and safe human conversation. And then return to source without forcing it. One breath, one sincere sentence. I am here. Help me come back to life. The divine responds to sincerity, not spectacle. If you are in holy detachment, honor it. Do not sabotage it by re-entering drama to prove you're still alive. Many beings are so addicted to intensity that peace feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar is mistaken for wrong. Peace is not boredom. Peace is baseline. Are these truths expanding your perspective? Share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Now, if you've been sensing that something shifted collectively, that the air feels lighter in certain pockets, there's a reason, and it changes how you live forward from here. Collective clearing waves. Why it feels like the other side. Many of you have been asking silently, has something moved through? Has there been a group-level clearing? Are we collectively on the other side of a wave? The answer is, you are not imagining the passage. Collective fields are not just poetic ideas. You experience them daily. How moods spread, how narratives rise and fall, how outrage propagates, how compassion mobilizes across distances, how your inner state can shift even when personal circumstances did not change. That is not nothing. That is the atmosphere of shared attention moving through you. Group shifts occur when shared agreements begin to break, when denial weakens, when exhaustion reaches a point where the soul refuses to keep paying the old price. Prolonged intensity extracts what is essential. It forces clarification. Clarification is the collapse of excuses, the inability to keep pretending. The moment you see the cost of your old pattern clearly and you change, not because someone told you to, but because suffering becomes more expensive than truth. This is why many of you feel you are on the other side, not because challenges vanished, but because inner bargaining diminished. Fewer arguments with reality, fewer negotiations with what you know is true. The mind still tries old strategies, but it has less persuasive power because you have seen the price. And when enough beings have that breakthrough privately, even without talking about it, the collective begins to tilt. Less tolerance for obvious distortion, less patience for empty authority, less willingness to cooperate with systems that require sacrificing integrity. At the same time, not everyone is on the same pace. The collective is a mosaic of timelines. Some are integrating quickly, some are resisting, some are waking, some are doubling down. So yes, you can feel lighter and still witness density around you. That does not invalidate your experience. It reflects planetary complexity in transition. The most useful framing is this: a collective thinning of tolerance for falsehood, a collective rise of hunger for authenticity, and widespread private integration of emotional burdens carried for generations. Many breakthroughs are quiet, not dramatic, not posted. A starseed not checking the phone compulsively when discomfort hits. A being speaking one honest sentence after years of silence. A soul no longer abandoning itself to keep others comfortable. A person stopping the habit of explaining their path to those committed to misunderstanding it. These are liberation events. They accumulate. So if you feel after, treat it as invitation, not conclusion. Do not cling to the feeling. Cooperate with the opening. Deepen your daily contact with Source. Clean your agreements. Choose what aligns. Simplify what you have been complicating. That is how a wave becomes a new baseline rather than a temporary mood. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to be part of this transformational cosmic journey. And now comes the part that decides everything: how you live forward without recreating chaos, and how you stabilize a fifth density center while still walking through Earth reality. Living forward, agreements, inputs, and the new fuel source. The other side is not a destination. It is a new relationship with reality. And the way you stabilize it is not intensity. It is consistency, returning. Returning is gentle. Returning is flexible. Returning is not a rigid routine that you fail and then shame yourself for. It is loyalty to what is real. One breath, one hand on the heart, one moment of inner contact while washing dishes, one pause in the middle of a difficult conversation where you choose not to abandon integrity. The Arcturians transmit: do not make spirituality dependent on your best days. Communion is not a reaction, it is a rhythm. Now, treat your agreements as architecture. Many of you were trained to feel life happens to you, but you are beginning to see that what you repeatedly agree with becomes your atmosphere. If you agree with fear repeatedly, your timeline feels like a corridor of threat. If you agree with cynicism, love feels naive. If you agree with bitterness, your life becomes a courtroom prosecuting reality. If you agree with Source as the only power, your inner world softens into trust, not because events are always easy, but because the authority interpreting events has changed. This is not denial. This is refusal to worship appearances. Events can be chaotic, but power is not divided. The trap is believing an intense event must be ultimate truth. You are graduating from that trap. You can witness events without letting them define identity. You can respond without surrendering sovereignty. Now the practical discipline. Simplify inputs. Inner knowing is not faint. It is quiet. It does not compete with noise. It waits. Many of you consume endless streams of commentary, predictions, and emotional contagion, then wonder why your guidance feels distant. Reduce the streams. Choose fewer sources. Choose cleaner sources. Choose slower sources. Give yourself spaces where you are not being told what to fear, what to want, what to believe. Those spaces are not empty. They are portals where your own wisdom becomes audible. Then, let form become canvas, not compass. The immature polarity is clinging to form as savior or rejecting form as beneath you. Both are attachment. The mature posture is, form is where love is embodied. Form is where truth becomes practical. Form is where devotion becomes visible. Pay bills from presence. Clean your home from presence. Speak to humans with care. Laugh. Rest. Move your body. These are not distractions. They are embodiment. Your assignment is not to float above Earth. It is to bring higher coherence into Earth reality. And here is the deepest shift of all. Your old ambition may be fading. Do not panic. You are not losing drive. You are being released from a false fuel source. Ambition seeks proof. Calling seeks expression. Ambition compares. Calling moves steadily. You will know you are following calling when actions feel clean, even if challenging. When choices increase self-respect. When you stop needing to dramatize your path for it to feel real. This is not for everyone. The ebook. The 12 Arcturian Portals is a restricted trilogy created for those who are ready to activate their 5D connection with the Arcturian Masters, not in theory, but in real energetic experience. Inside, you'll access 12 powerful portals, with precise activation protocols, rituals, and practical techniques designed to awaken your stellar DNA and unlock what has been dormant within you. Amplified intuition, direct communication with spiritual guides, energetic expansion beyond the 3D matrix. Warning: once activated, your perception will not return to the previous state. Limited edition. Access can close at any moment. The link to claim your trilogy is in the first pinned comment. If this message reached you, it's not random. But there is one final refinement you must carry, because the last trap of third density is subtle, turning peace into a fragile thing you must defend. The new baseline: peace without worship, creation without proving. Here is the final refinement. Peace is not fragile. Truth is not fragile. Source is not fragile. What is fragile is the identity that believes it must control outcomes to be safe. Many of you have lived with bracing as a baseline, bracing against disappointment, bracing against loss, bracing against being misunderstood. That bracing becomes so familiar you forget it is a choice. And then one day you soften, perhaps through meditation, perhaps through exhaustion, perhaps through gratitude, perhaps through a single, honest surrender. And you feel what was waiting underneath the defenses the entire time. Not a bargain, not a test, not a condition. Presence. This is why you cannot go back. You cannot go back to believing material things will complete you, because you have tasted completion from within. You cannot go back to being bribed by shallow stimuli, because you have felt the deeper current those stimuli were imitating. But remember, not going back does not mean rejecting Earth. It means living here without worshipping form. It means letting beauty be enjoyed without becoming an altar. It means letting relationships be cherished without becoming substitutes. It means letting creativity be expression rather than proof. True strength after clearing is gentle. It is the strength to not be provoked, the strength to not enter arguments that degrade your spirit, the strength to speak truth without cruelty, the strength to say no without guilt, the strength to be misunderstood without collapsing. If your awakening makes you contemptuous of humans, contemptuous of the body, contemptuous of form, something has distorted. True source contact does not produce superiority. It produces humility and compassion. You stop judging others for chasing substitutes because you remember how it felt to be hungry without knowing where the true food was. Now, how do you stabilize this as a permanent baseline? By living a relationship with Source, relationship with truth, relationship with your inner authority, relationship with life as sacred. Do not cling to a feeling. Feelings fluctuate. Live a rhythm of return. And when you have days that feel heavy, do not interpret heaviness as failure. You are not required to be bright to be aligned. You are required to be honest. Alignment is not a mood. Alignment is fidelity. We leave you with a single clean transmission. The world does not need to be perfect for you to be at peace, because peace is no longer negotiated. It is remembered. Your life is not meaningless because the old incentives dissolved. Your life becomes more meaningful because you are now a vessel for what is real. Meaning is no longer something you chase. It is something you radiate, inside out, through ordinary actions infused with presence. If this message impacted your life, leave your like, comment your reflection, and share with others. Each of you is part of this chain of light.